Alright, this is day 1. First day. It's fall term 2019, week 1, and this is NET-134 IT Essentials. Today we covered a number of things. Introduction to the course. We talked about the Cisco Networking Academy and computing devices. Alright, so let's take a look at introduction to the course. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. You will hear me refer to the NIAC academic IT, and we're going to talk more about that in future classes. But initially, to log in the academic IT area is different than the rest of campus. This is what we use for your user ID, and this is the initial password. Once you enter that, then you need to adjust it. Okay? And if you have trouble remembering that, you have to get a hold of me, and there's all kinds of information on the syllabi and Canvas and so forth about getting hold of me to fix that in the IT area. Some of the computers in the IT area use Linux, and some of them run on Windows in PC 229. So initially we were using the ones where you log into the Windows into the domain. More on that later. Then I handed out some cards. On those cards, got your name, the date, some background, and why you're involved with technology. Expectations for the course, and any learning concerns that I need to know that would help me do a better job of helping you learn the material. We started out talking about computing devices. We talked about PCs. Let me use a little different color here. We talked about PCs. Talked about laptops. We talked about smartphones, printers, Internet of Things, embedded devices, etc., etc., etc. All these places that are computing devices. So in this case, we're talking about the hardware. Now, what communicates with the hardware is software. System software communicates back and forth with the hardware. And more specifically, the operating system. So we have this relationship then between an operating system and whatever hardware it's running on. We did the example in class. We talked about smartphones. There's more than two, but two major ones, which was the Android and the iPhone. The iOS with a little I and the Android. And then we did a little comparison. We looked them up, and we found in the United States there's quite a bit of iPhone usage, but on the world as a whole, Android is much more popular. Then we talked about how applications communicate with an operating system. We used the example of if you can download an app for your iPhone, it has to match an iPhone. It has to be an app for an iPhone because the apps talk to the operating system, the iOS. So if you're going to download an app for your Android, then it has to match an Android. The same thing is true if you're going to download something for Windows operating system. you would have to have a different version of that software if it existed, if you want to run it on Linux operating systems. Then I asked the students what's the most important part here, and I am going to argue that people are. We have people that are users, and really they just want to work with the app. You know, they just want to be able to text on their phone, social media, you know, I don't know, all those things you do on your phone, or the things you do on a computer. Type up a term paper, maybe you do some YouTube videos for fun, or maybe you do that for part of your living, which people can do. So, we talked about the people that just really want to use technology and maybe do not care to know a lot about how it works. In this class, we want to move you from a user to being an expert, in which you know about all these levels. You wouldn't have to know everything, but you know about how the hardware works, you know how to install a simple operating system to communicate with the hardware, system software to make your system work well, like file systems and so forth. And then how do you install some apps to take advantage of this technology? Okay? For the users to use. Now, a couple other major areas we need to cover here yet. So they're coming in the future class, but we need to talk about data. You know, what do we actually store? Data, the actual data, your name, your address, your bank account amount. We won't talk directly about that, but we'll talk about the data. And then the key thing is, how do you communicate that data from where you are, let's say with your smartphone, to somewheres out in what we refer to as the cloud, which could be through the internet or other means, to other computing devices. Okay? So we'll talk about how we communicate. And those are the key things. So, what do you do next? Well, in class we talked about change, and we had some work in the Canvas course, that's NIAC Canvas course, and then in NetAcad you need to be able to log into NetAcad, and you're going to work on the curriculum. If you get far enough, you can take that first quiz. Doesn't count against you. You're going to review the syllabus. And a key thing on how we learn in the class, there's a lot of work that you have to do, the learner. And in reality, that's both of us. That's you as a student and me as an instructor. We're both learning as we go. There's a certain amount of things you need to do outside of class, and then there's a number of things we will do in class. As an example, all of the lab work, or most of it. There'll be some outside class. Most of the lab work and key items that are harder to understand are done in the class. So this might be a change. This might be a little bit of a change from how you've done classes in the past. So the first thing you do is to embrace it and try to understand it, and when it isn't clear, you talk to me. All right. that is it for our first whiteboard review.